What if the real secrets to happiness aren't in books or billionaires, but in the hearts of people who've lived nearly a century? Welcome to Elder Secrets, where today we unlock the wisdom of those in their 90s who found joy that lasts. Stay with us as we uncover the gentle truths they swear by, because happiness, it turns out, only gets clearer with age.
What if the greatest teachers of happiness aren't, the self-help guru or wellness coaches we often seek out? What if they're actually sitting quietly right now, maybe in nursing homes or retirement communities? Today, we're doing a deep dive into the counterintuitive secrets of happiness they've gathered over a lifetime. These aren't just abstract ideas, right? They're powerful insights from people who've genuinely seen it all, lost a lot, gained wisdom, and really discovered what remains when everything else falls away. We'll be exploring specific lessons from individuals who've, put happiness to the ultimate test. Let's start uncovering these insights.
It is truly compelling because in our modern world, we're often looking for quick fixes or these grand strategies for happiness. But these individuals, just through sheer longevity and navigating immense change, they've tested and refined what actually works. It's a completely different kind of authority we're tapping into here.
I agree. That lived experience gives their wisdom a unique weight, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So where do we begin to unpack this foundational understanding of happiness? Let's start with those who lived through the Great Depression. Take Margaret, for instance. She turned 94 last month. When you ask her about happiness, she doesn't talk about big achievements or wealth. Instead, she talks about morning coffee with her late husband, the sound of her children's laughter, just the simple pleasure of watching seasons change from her window.
Yeah, and if we connect Margaret's perspective to her whole generation, what's really striking is that they learned happiness because of hardship, not in spite of it. The Great Depression basically taught them that happiness couldn't be bought or even perfectly planned out. It had to be found, in whatever circumstances life threw at them. That's a fundamental shift from how many of us might pursue it today.
So it sounds like for them, happiness wasn't some distant goal to chase after, but maybe more like weather, something that comes and goes, but when it's there, you really notice it, you appreciate it fully. Is that sort of the idea?
That's spot on, yeah. They developed something psychologists now might call hedonic adaptation resistance. It means actively, consciously maintaining appreciation for simple pleasures, not just taking them for granted over time. Robert, who's 91, he highlights this perfectly. He says, "We didn't have much growing up, so when good things happen, maybe getting an orange for Christmas or hearing a favorite song on the radio, we paid attention, really paid attention."
Okay. So it's not just appreciating what you have, but almost developing this hyper-awareness, like a specific radar for those little moments of joy because they were maybe rare or unexpected. That's a really different lens.
Exactly. And from that, we can sort of distill what might be their first crucial insight or secret, if you like.
Yeah.
Scarcity gratitude. It really emerges from genuine lack, leading to this almost microscopic attention to positive moments. You learn to extract maximum joy from minimal inputs. It's about deep appreciation for the small things, precisely because, they often were rare.
That idea of finding joy in scarcity, it kind of naturally leads us to another really profound lesson. The art of letting go. I mean, when you've lived as long as these individuals, you've inevitably faced immense loss. By this age, you've likely buried parents, siblings, so many friends, maybe even children. You've watched careers end, bodies change, whole ways of life just disappear. Yet, remarkably, many report higher life satisfaction.
Which raises the big question, right? How do they do it? How do they manage that? Eleanor, who's 93, she explains this paradox quite beautifully. She says, "You learn that holding on to things too tightly, it doesn't keep them from changing. It just makes you miserable when they do change. I've learned to love with open hands."
Wow. That phrase, loving with open hands, that really resonates. But, for many listeners, it might feel counterintuitive, maybe almost like caring less. How do these individuals balance that deep love with accepting loss without just becoming detached?
That's a crucial distinction. It isn't about caring less at all. It's about caring deeply, profoundly, while also accepting the temporary nature of all things. It's understanding that change is inevitable. And actually, studies on centenarians consistently link extreme longevity with this remarkable resilience to loss, reflecting that idea of, non-attachment. Not detachment, but non-attachment.
That makes so much sense. And Frank, 95, he really seems to embody this. He lost his wife after 67 years together. Yet, he chooses gratitude for their time together over being consumed by sadness. He says, "She wouldn't want me wasting time on sadness when there are still sunrises to see and grandchildren to spoil."
Frank's wisdom there, it reveals their second core insight. Happiness often requires learning to grieve well. Grief isn't seen as the enemy of joy. Actually, it can be a doorway to deeper appreciation. It allows you to hold sorrow and gratitude simultaneously. That's a real testament to emotional maturity.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and turn our attention to the physical spaces these nonagenarians live in. If you walk into the home of someone in their 90s, you'll probably notice something quite striking. There often isn't that much stuff. And this isn't just about, downsizing because they're older. It seems to reflect a fundamental shift in understanding what truly contributes to happiness. Dorothy, 92, she realized, all that stuff was just noise. The things that actually made me happy were usually free conversations with friends, letters from my children, the feeling of accomplishment after finishing a good book.
Exactly. This simplification, it isn't usually born from inability. It's hard-won wisdom about true well-being. It comes from decades of, you could say, testing various happiness hypotheses in their own lives. Our culture often pushes acquiring more, right? But studies actually show that while younger people might seek happiness from new experiences and buying things, older adults tend to find greater satisfaction in familiar pleasures and meaningful relationships. It really is refinement, not limitation. It's wisdom born of experience.
That really reframes the whole idea of busyness for me. It's not about packing things in, but distilling down to what truly fulfills you. Think about James, 90, and his carefully curated collection of reliable joy sources. A daily routine involving coffee, the newspaper, his garden, phone calls, reading, maybe some classical music. He puts it so well. I've learned the difference between being busy and being fulfilled. When I was younger, I thought happiness meant having lots of options and excitement. Now I know it means having a few things you really love and doing them well.
And that brings us beautifully to their third significant insight. Focus on depth, not breadth. Going deeper into fewer activities and relationships, it seems, often yields greater contentment than putting your attention thinly across many shallow pursuits. It's really about quality over quantity in, well, pretty much all aspects of life.
Now, if you ask someone in their 90s about their greatest source of happiness, the answer almost always circles back to relationships. But their understanding of relationships seems quite refined, wouldn't you say? Helen, 94, reflecting on 70 years of marriage, she said something like, the best relationships aren't the ones that never have problems, they're the ones where you learn to navigate problems together. For her, the happiness actually came from working through conflict as a team.
That really highlights that sustainable relationships require skills, actual skills. Communication, forgiveness, patience, a sense of humor. It's a very mature understanding that goes beyond those idealized, maybe romantic notions we often start with. And Mary, 91, talking about friendship, she adds another layer. She says, I've learned to be a better friend by being less demanding. I appreciate whatever they can give, and I try to give without keeping score. It's made my friendships so much richer.
So what's the kind of practical takeaway for us, for the listener, from this wisdom about relationships? How do we apply that?
Well, their fourth insight seems to be this. Invest in relationships for the long haul, not for some immediate payoff. And this means, practically, choosing kindness over needing to be right, choosing forgiveness over holding grudges, choosing presence, just being there, over trying to perform or impress. The deepest joy, they suggest, often comes from who you become through the act of loving others. It's genuinely an investment in your own character.
Okay, here's something that feels really counterintuitive. Nonagenarians, people with the longest past and the shortest future ahead of them, are often the most present-focused people you'll meet. George, 93, he explained it like this. When you're young, you spend so much time preparing for life that you forget to live it. I missed so much happiness that was right in front of me because I was looking ahead.
Yeah, their experience seems to show them that, anticipation is often better than the reality, and that most of the things we worry about just never happen. They truly recognize how precious the present moment is. And research backs this up. It shows older adults are generally better at emotional regulation and tend to focus on the positive aspects of their current situation. That's powerful learned wisdom right there.
Ruth, 96, really illustrates this. Despite physical limitations, she describes herself as fundamentally happy. She says, every morning when I wake up, I notice 3 things. That I slept well, that I'm comfortable in my bed, and that there's light coming through my window. That's enough to start the day with gratitude. Everything else is bonus. Just beautiful.
That's their 5th insight, perfectly captured. Happiness is found right here, in the present moment, through conscious attention. It's about extracting joy from your immediate experience, really appreciating what is rather than focusing on what might be or what was.
This next one is profound. and maybe unexpected. It's about finding a source of happiness and accepting mortality. Thomas, 94, he speaks very candidly about it. Knowing that my time is limited doesn't make me sad, it makes everything more precious. Every conversation with my grandson, every sunset, every good meal feels more significant.
Right. And this phenomenon, what researchers sometimes call socio-emotional selectivity, it helps explain how that awareness of limited time creates this kind of natural prioritization system. It focuses you on what truly matters. And this perspective is actually liberating, not morbid. They seem to have made peace with mortality, and paradoxically, that acceptance actually enhances their capacity for joy. Studies of centenarians often show that the happiest ones adapt gracefully to aging, finding new meaning rather than just mourning lost abilities.
That perspective is truly profound. It's hard to wrap your head around, especially maybe when we're younger, that accepting mortality could actually enhance life. So, what's the core message here for us if we're trying to apply this understanding?
I think their sixth insight is this. Accepting mortality enhances life by creating a kind of urgency around joy, a clarity about your priorities, and a deep gratitude for the time you have remaining. It's really about living fully, because time is finite, not in spite of it.
Beyond these sort of grand life lessons, they've also really mastered the art of creating happiness through small, consistent rituals. Alice, 91, she described her Tuesday letter ritual every Tuesday. She writes a real physical letter to someone she cares about. She says, "It gives me something to look forward to, keeps me connected, and it makes me feel useful."
Yeah, these small rituals, they seem to create these predictable pockets of joy. They provide structure, meaning, connection. And importantly, they're entirely within one's control, even when other things might feel out of control. Successful aging research consistently points to the importance of routine and ritual for well-being, which kind of contrasts with the focus on spontaneity we often see in youth culture.
So, how can listeners maybe apply this wisdom of daily rituals to their own lives? What's the principle?
I think their seventh insight is that happiness can be, in a way, engineered through small, consistent rituals that connect you to what you value most. It's about intentionally building little moments of joy and meaning into the fabric of your daily life.
Non-engineerians also seem to possess this really deep understanding of the happiness benefits of forgiveness. I mean, they've accumulated decades of conflicts and disappointments, right? William, 92, reflecting on anger he'd carried for years towards his deceased father, said something powerful. That anger didn't hurt him, it only hurt me. I was choosing to carry that weight every day. He said forgiveness wasn't about saying what he did was okay. It was about putting down a burden I was tired of carrying.
And that understanding frames forgiveness as primarily self-liberation, not just some moral obligation you should do. Resentment is like an emotional prison, and forgiveness is the key to letting yourself out. They seem to have learned to forgive life itself for not being perfect, others for being imperfect, and crucially, themselves for their own mistakes. So, maybe an important question for you, the listener, is, are you willing to put down that burden you might be carrying?
It really shifts the perspective, doesn't it? From forgiveness being about the other person to it being an act of, well, self-preservation almost. So this isn't about condoning bad actions, but rather consciously choosing not to let that emotional baggage poison your present. That sounds incredibly pragmatic.
Precisely. And that's their eighth insight. Forgiveness is primarily a gift to yourself. Letting go of resentment and regret literally creates space for happiness. It prevents past hurts from contaminating your present moments.
Now, one particularly moving finding about happiness in very old age is the continued importance of feeling useful, of contributing to others. Betty, 93, volunteers at a literacy program despite having arthritis. She says, "When I help someone sound out a word, when I see the pride in their eyes, I remember why I'm still here. There's always something you can give."
And this is a really consistent pattern among happy nonagenarians. They actively find new ways to be useful. Maybe sharing wisdom, supporting causes they care about, or simply being a source of love and support for their family. Research confirms this too. Older adults who maintain a sense of purpose and feel like they're contributing report higher life satisfaction and even tend to live longer.
So what's the fundamental takeaway for us about the role of contribution in a happy life, based on their experience?
I think their ninth insight is simply that happiness often requires feeling needed. And contribution doesn't have to be some grand gesture. It just needs to be genuine and valued by you and perhaps by others. It's about continuing to be an active part of the world, not just passively observing it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the happiness secrets of nonagenarians, what really emerges is this picture of contentment that is, I don't know, both simpler and more sophisticated than the typical happiness formulas we often hear about. Their wisdom has been truly tested over nearly a century of real-world application.
Yeah, their whole approach to happiness feels fundamentally different. It seems to be much more about subtraction and refinement. It's about discovering that happiness often comes not from getting what you want, but from wanting what you have. That's a really profound shift in perspective.
And the way to cultivate this approach, it seems to involve these core skills we've talked about: gratitude, acceptance, forgiveness, presence, and simplicity.
Absolutely. And as Margaret, our 94-year-old teacher from the beginning, put it so beautifully, I wish I had known in my 20s what I know now about happiness.
Hmm.
She said, the secret isn't in reaching some perfect destination. It's in learning to love the trip, even when the road gets bumpy.
Wow. What a profound thought to leave us with. And the thing is, this wisdom, it isn't exclusive to being 90, is it? It feels timeless, available right now. So the fundamental question for you, the listener, might be, are we willing to learn from those who've walked this path before us to find maybe a deeper contentment and joy, whatever stage of life we're in?